Hello, world, and welcome to This Week on Planet Internet. My name is Ellen Stevens, and I'm the editor and community advocate here at Hacker Noon. And today, I will be playing the role of your host. I'm joined today by two stunning guests. On one side of the planet, located in Colorado, USA, we have the intelligent Hung, who is our business analyst superhero. Hello. Welcome. And on the other side of the planet, in literally London, England, we have Mr. Nicolas, who is one of our star junior editors. Welcome.
Hello,
Hey,
thanks for
Nick.
having me on the show.
Nick, you look awkward.
Oh God, why do you have to point that out? That'll be worse.
I love it too. I like calling people out. So sorry.
Afternoon podcast.
Great. Okay, so today we have a hard-hitting episode prepared for listeners and viewers that will examine space hotels, the historic collapse of the Soviet Union, and how it contributed to mass crypto adoption in the Ukraine, as well as what is going on with Facebook and the so-called whistleblower. To start us off, we will examine the complexity of the latest Facebook saga. What are the accusations against them, and does their shutdown have anything to do with the allegations? So I have an article here from The Guardian. So I should start sharing screen. Great. So we have an article here titled, "A Facebook Whistleblower Accuses Firm of Serially Misleading Over Safety." So, Hung, could you briefly describe what the article is about and your thoughts on what stood out for you?
Okay. So over the weekend and on Monday, and I'm sorry from the background noise because that's what Denver. That's how Denver is. So on Monday, there's this 60 minutes interview that's accused literally Facebook of a lot of there like a total of 8 complaints and accusations against Facebook. And in short, they accuse Facebook of knowingly choosing to permit political misinformation and contest statement, along with hate speech and mental health issue in teenagers against toward its user. So the complaints against Facebook, Ellen, can you scroll down a little bit?
No, you can keep going.
Yes. So the complaints against Facebook is approach to hate speech, teenage mental health, human trafficking, hate speech, preferential treatment against toward VIP people. Like I didn't even know Facebook has VIP users. Like what do they do? Is Donald Trump a VIP user? I don't know. It also failed to inform investors about declining user base in certain demography. So, for example, the Gen Z, people at the age of 23 and under, they see a declining number in users in Facebook, which I agree. I mean, I'm a Gen Z. I'm pretty sure Nick is also a Gen Z, and our friend don't really use Facebook anymore. I have an account just to have an account, So,
Right. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of the accusations? Nick?
Yeah, so I think that they're definitely pretty serious. I think that we can agree, generally speaking, that all of these things, if true, they're not ideal for society for sure. What about Nicholas? Do you have a Facebook account?
Yeah, like Hang said, I do technically have a Facebook account, but I haven't touched it in 6 years. I kind of log in to see which spammer is trying to add me to my friends, add themselves into my friends list and all that. But I don't actually know anyone my age who seriously uses Facebook of their own volition. And I think that this is confirmation that there really is a decline, because Facebook kind of never really addresses that. but I think we all knew what was happening.
Yeah.
And the fact that they've been playing it down is a bit damning.
Yeah, it's not like they playing it down. I think they just try to like mislead the investor. Like overall, the user base of Facebook is still going up because like if we don't use it, like I'm pretty sure our parents use this, our grandparents use this. Can you believe it? Both my grandparents have a Facebook account. My parents are active Facebook user. I don't understand. They know more about Facebook than myself. And for me, I only have Facebook because I need to update my family in Vietnam how I am doing and to make sure like I'm still alive. But I can confirm also like even my friends who don't use Facebook a lot anymore. And Nick, I'm curious, what is your main social media?
Technically Reddit, but if I'm actually communicating with my friends, it's Instagram.
Yeah, same. But like, see, Instagram is still a part of the Facebook empire, right? So like,
It is.
so when Facebook talk to the investor about the user base, they may or may not. I haven't followed Facebook like quarter review, like earning call for like 2 quarters now because I don't care anymore.
So just to jump in here a little bit, so when you guys have used Facebook or any other such platform that's associated with them, do you find a lot of hateful content, or do you find that it's largely like family photos and silly memes and stuff like that?
Personally, it's the latter. I don't really engage in things outside of like the bare minimum social like interaction. So I wouldn't really find hate speech. But I think if say someone's parents are more invested on the platform, spent more time there, then they would definitely encounter hate speech before long.
I mean, like, if you follow the vaccination status in the US, you know, a lot of people refuse to get vaccinated, right? And like, based on the state you are in, they will have like ad to tell people like, hey, go get vaccinated. And below you can find a lot of comment like, you don't know what in the vaccine, or like vaccinated people are stupid, something like that. I do consider it a hateful comment, but because I'm never on Facebook much, I don't know if they are still like a thing. For Instagram, I never really have like hate speech because my friend just shit post a lot, just the silly content. So
right. That's kind of what I was thinking about, because I do use Facebook on a regular basis, and very seldom do I see hate content. There might be silly content, there might be quirky content, but none of it I think I would identify as being necessarily hateful. What I do see though is Facebook removing, if a joke maybe is a little bit too edgy, it gets removed. And there's a lot of complaints actually that there's a bit of overregulation happening with Facebook. So I do wonder about these allegations. Sort of branching off that, do you think allegations should be treated as fact? I guess Nicolas could take that one.
Broadly speaking, I would say no, unless it's like proven in a court of law, because we generally operate on the principle of innocent unless different is proven. So not really, but in this instance, we are looking at a whistleblower who is like bringing evidence. So it's not more concrete than a simple accusation. I think she has the information and evidence to back up her claims. So I think.
Sure. So I'm glad you brought that up. So actually, I have a quote here from The Guardian from that article. And it does say that our anonymous client is disclosing original evidence showing that Facebook. So I do wonder who did these studies allegedly, because if, I hired someone, they want to remain anonymous. They kind of looked at maybe like I don't know, like only a smidge of the content that Facebook uses, analyzed that, said I'm anonymous, and then presented it as a research paper, that that's not necessarily really good evidence. So I definitely kind of wonder about the quality and the alleged research that was done by Facebook about this. So again, that'll be for the courts to decide. But it did make me wonder, especially that line, an anonymous client. So by the point that this article was published, like that woman was already public. So I do wonder who provided this original evidence. So I am kind of a little bit curious with respect to that.
I'm sorry, Ellen, I need to chime in here. If you are making accusations against like of such a big empire like Facebook, do you want to make yourself known? Like, do you want to like go forward and say, hey, my name is Ellen. I'm having the accusation against Facebook, and without like Facebook suing you or like the whole Facebook legal team suing you,
So I think normally, right, from my perspective at least, usually these people are sometimes threatened or bribed or, whatever else, maybe they have an allegiance to a particular party. So sometimes that person, maybe they don't even want to say these things, but they're forced into it. So, I do kind of wonder a little bit about that. I wonder what the motive, I wonder what the relationship with Facebook this person has, right? So she was part of a group that was, assigned to monitor the election. And then that group was dissipated. And so I don't know if her job was I don't know exactly the circumstances of what happened, but it did kind of make me question some of these allegations. It's up to the courts to see if it's in fact true. But I did have another thing to ask you guys is, do you think that so let's assume, so they're accused of knowing about trafficking, for example, which is very bad. But, trafficking unfortunately happens with like people will get trafficked on those shipping containers, for example. So should we stop all trade, because there is a fringe of society doing really horrible things? And how much can private companies, really be responsible for the things that people choose to do? That is a question that I have, because when you're servicing such a large population of users, sometimes things are gonna happen and you try and ban those accounts, but this again, I really question. So like we all know, for example, that bad things happen on ships and shipping containers, but we don't stop trade. So does anyone have maybe an input on that statement? Hung?
Nick, do you have anything to say about this? Honestly, also Ellen, by private company, you mean public company? Because Facebook is certainly not private at all.
Sure. I guess I mean it's not a government entity, or
So like you mean like the social media who like service such a large population of people, and I don't know. We as normal users are not responsible for whatever let's just say the bad guys do. I understand this is inevitable because like people serve like billions of people in the world. The thing with the accusation is that it's not like we should stop or trust or not. Like if they don't know it, if Facebook don't know it, and for some reason they miss us, this they can't do anything about it because they don't even know about it. The accusation here is that Facebook knew about it, and they just chose to let it happen because allegedly. Maybe some of allegedly, that's why I say the accusation here is. So if that's true, this is a very, very bad case for Facebook because human trafficking is always a big crime in the world. And if that is a real thing, then we have nothing to do. Facebook will be in a huge scandal. But here, I don't know, this is an accusation. So like, if your question is, should we just stop using all the social media? Or like, if we should stop using, if we just try to ban all social media in general, I just say no, because social media is still a way for people to connect. Like, for example, my family is all the way in Vietnam, right? So like, I still need some sort of social media to connect with them. But we have the right to choose what kind of content that we post on the social media. Like for me, if I have like a very small child in the house, I would never post that pictures, his or her pictures on social media.
Yeah.
Because I have a very crazy story about like people stalk you and then try to like kidnap your sister or kidnap your brother. And I never want that to happen to my family. So I hope like that makes sense. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really smart. So, just before we move, actually, it is questionable to me. Sometimes people very publicly post, photos.
No, that's their choice. Well, that's their choice. They want to share the happening with the world. I just choose not to do it.
Yeah, of course.
There's no judgment against people who do it.
Okay, so that's I think that was a great and balanced discussion there.
Another one. Okay. Following all the accusation on Monday, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp went under a 6-hour global outage. Nobody could get access to them, and this is the longest outage since 2008. I don't think it kind of sucks, but Maxos towards it from configuration change in the backbone router. So it's all the engineering problem. Yeah.
Right. So what really happened, I don't know if everyone was following, but at around that time, Hacker Noon published an article called "Why You Should Quit Social Media Permanently." And it was an article talking about how quitting social media allows you to have more time with real friends, more time in general, more spontaneity, less politics, and attentiveness to the world around you. And then Facebook went down. So, crazy coincidence. So just to sort of relay one final element on this, Mark Zuckerberg does deny the claims and says that they don't really make very much logical sense. So we'll see how that plays out. But I did want to move on to the next article that we have here. And it is about Ukrainians and how they are the top adopters of cryptocurrency in the world. So do you guys see the article, right?
Yes, I do see that.
Okay, perfect. And I think our star, Nicolas here, reviewed the article. So briefly describe what it was about and your thoughts on the article.
Sure. So in brief, this article is covering basically the effects of Ukraine's parliament passing legislation that essentially acknowledges and defines cryptocurrency legally in the country. It's not really setting up Bitcoin as like a legal tender and not really going out in the streets paying with it. But it is the start of, it could be the start of such a system. It's laying down the framework for integrating cryptocurrency a little bit more. And it's just interesting in general to read about how Ukraine is joining a host of other countries in acknowledging cryptocurrency as a currency, I suppose. But I think some things I found very interesting about the article is that it confirms that, or is continuing a trend that developing countries are using crypto as a way of dealing with corrupt banks, for example. They don't have a lot of trust in their banking system. And it also adds a bit more legitimacy to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in general, because another government is is recognizing it and trying to lay the groundwork to integrating it properly with their banking sector. And I believe that was a small part about nuclear reactors, like
Right. Yeah.
or them producing excess energy being used to produce Bitcoin. I think that's also something that's very interesting to look at, because there are significant energy implications to farming Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, but they have found a way to do it without worsening the impact on the climate by using a sustainable resource and nuclear energy to do it. So I think the article covers a lot of stuff that is very interesting. And I think there's good reason to be optimistic to the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general.
Great. Wow. Well, that's that you definitely got the main points there. So Hung, did you have a chance to review, and what are your thoughts on the article?
I think it's very interesting. And disclaimer. Okay, disclaimer to listener. Okay, this is not a call for you to go and buy Bitcoin or Ethereum. We have nothing with the investment of cryptocurrency at all. So I think it's a very interesting story about the adoption of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general in like many developing countries. Especially, I think I read about Venezuela also like trying to adopt cryptocurrency because of the inflation in their money, and so this just mean like cryptocurrency is getting more validation around the world, and the future of banking and finance, like the traditional banking, finance, and the fiat money, is in question, at least in the developing country. That's what I can tell like from skimming the article. I didn't really like read it like in details. I can't read it in detail like Nick because, well, hello, but yeah.
Well, I think, so it is an interesting, so both of you touched upon this trend of developing countries adopting Bitcoin. And I think that is fascinating because I think we were on a previous podcast before with Utsav, who had mentioned that sometimes countries, they have sanctions and other things like that from, countries with a lot more money. And those countries will not necessarily let the smaller countries borrow a certain amount of money. And so this cryptocurrency allows them to gain a sort of independence and access to greater wealth than they might otherwise. So what's interesting about the relationship between Ukraine and Russia is that, Russia has been kind of like the big brother situation, and they've invaded Ukraine a number of times. And so part of the adoption has to do a little bit with that. So I think in about 2014, so here's what it says. I don't know if I'll find it down here, but basically what it's saying is after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, Ukraine's economy took a nosedive, and Ukraine's national currency, the hryvnia, I think, lost 70% of its value against the dollar. That's not funny. I was just laughing at my own pronunciation. This further undermined the savings and spending power of the public. Now, the average person with smaller savings will often hide their money at home and won't bother storing it at the bank. So that's kind of an important element. And so it goes on further to say, actually, that even before this pattern of nefarious behavior, the Ukrainian banking industry did not develop the same way as it did in the West after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The process of transferring funds was problematic due to the lack of infrastructure. With high degrees of corruption in the government, business and banking sectors, unlawful asset seizures by corrupt politicians, and the collapse of several Ukraine's prominent banks, it is only reasonable that the decentralized nature of Bitcoin appeals to the people. So I think the energy element is one thing, but I also think the political climate, which has been relatively unstable in a country like Ukraine, is actually one of the driving factors for the population being really open to cryptocurrency. And so I find that interesting from a governance perspective. I find it interesting from just a result of what happens when you have a system, like the Soviet Union, where there's too much centralized power with the government. So I believe they had a socialist system. That's what the Soviet Union was. So this idea of decentralization is actually progressive in a lot of different ways, because when you have too much power in a centralized location, sometimes that can have negative results. So that was our little. Does anyone else have anything to add with respect to the Ukraine article? No, I think
Yeah, I think very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say it is very interesting. You keep talking.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the day like developing like first class country like America or Canada actually adopt cryptocurrency as like the main, like an official way to like for transactions. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, well, I think banks are starting to examine how to make that happen, because they, it's one of those things. If you can't beat them, join them. So banks don't want to lose power. So they're adopting crypto, but there's a bit of irony with respect to that. Okay, so I wanted to start off our next segment with respect to things that are just amazing around the internet. Sort of to lead us into the final bits of the podcast here with some fun or quirky or strange news that's entertaining. So the first article that I'd like to present here is a space hotel concept. So I am really obsessed with this because I find it fascinating. So it's the article was on CNN or is on CNN, and it's called "The World's First Space Hotel Scheduled to Open in 2027. So basically, a Californian company called the Gateway Foundation released plans for a cruise ship style hotel that could one day float above the Earth's atmosphere. So it's got a very futuristic concept because it turns, they mimic the illusion of gravity. I was wondering what you guys thought. Would you stay in such a hotel, Nick? Would you, Nicolas? Would you be afraid? Would you want Hacker Noon to have a conference up there? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm generally apprehensive about going to space in general because of the Kessler effect and the fact that there is no atmosphere in space. So if something does happen to the station, I'll be in a bit of trouble. I don't really like that. But it's very interesting. Like, I would love to go at some point if it was safe somehow. Safer than it already is. It'll definitely be like a novelty. And if Hacker Noon were to have a conference and were to offer free tickets, I'll definitely want to go. But I think only under those conditions. I don't expect to be able to afford that in my lifetime.
Okay, well, you heard that here, David and Ling. We would like to go to space when it's available. So thank you. And Hung, how do you feel? Would you go to this hotel?
Only if it's free. Yeah.
Only if it's paid for by someone else. Yeah, very fair. Yeah, I think it would be out of this world to have an experience like that. But
That's so Ellen, that's so Ellen.
Oh my God.
So, but I do question the asteroid element. So, if the hotel is floating, would the hotel also have the ability to move itself? So, if an asteroid, because there's a lot of them, they float in space, potentially one could hit us at any time, which is fun to think about. So yeah, that's my one concern. Hopefully the asteroid, because it's like a circle. I don't know if you guys saw. So hopefully the asteroid would float through the but that might be taking a bit of a risk. All right. So I think we still have a little bit of time. So I think Hung, you wanted to maybe talk about Squid Game or not? Okay. So Nicolas, you reviewed an article about the floating cities and how that's the future. What could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So there was a article that I read this week about how the Netherlands are experimenting with floating cities, and some of it was a very interesting piece. It touched on some of the logistical challenges of having a floating town, but also mentioned is about the logistics and sustainability of such a building and the fact that we've done it before, as a species, hundreds of years ago. I think it's really interesting because ocean levels are rising. I'm from Singapore and we're threatened by that. So I always found the idea of a floating city very interesting when growing up, especially in sci-fi properties. So just reading about the fact that someone's actually gone and done it was really interesting.
Fascinating.
And, yeah. And hopefully we don't need to build more. We probably do, but it would be nice to see how it goes in the future. And maybe I would want to stay there because there's only the risk of drowning and not asphyxiation.
Only.
Yeah. And it's very, I feel it's going to be very aesthetically pleasing. I do every time people talk about floating city, I think of Asgard, Thor's country, right?
Yeah, Asgard. I think so.
I mean, it is somehow related, but whatever. But yeah, I'm from Vietnam, so a part of Vietnam is also as a risk of drowning, and the sea level also rising in a part of Vietnam. So just for the sake of not drowning and asphyxiation, we do need some floating cities in some part of the world. But I hope to see it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I agree because if the sea levels continue rising, then especially the cities that are closer to the edges of the water, what's the official the
coastal?
So that are closer to they have a large risk of ending up underwater. So making them float is quite clever in my opinion. So okay, so so I do wonder, with the sea levels rising and but then there's the thing of everything drying up. So I wonder, exactly how that will unfold. Okay. So I think this is probably the end of our podcast here, unless anyone has any urgent, spiels or, product placement elements. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. This is your host for today, Ellen Stevens, and I was joined by my wonderful guests. And this podcast is produced by Alex. So thank you, and have a wonderful day or
have
night.
a good one.
Or
have a great week.
Have a great week.
Yeah, have a good week. Okay.
Afternoon podcast.